Alright, so I know I missed a lot of Go-Go Loser Ranger while I was away, and instead of doing separate reviews for each episode, I decided to make this video my overall thoughts on each episode while I play catch-up. Is this series worth me still keeping up with weekly, or am I going to wait for the entire thing to finish and then I'm just going to binge it at my own pace? So the batch of these episodes deal with a few things. First up, we've got Ranger Force and their trials, which think of it as My Hero Academia, or a school where you're learning how to become a ranger for the Dragon Keepers. It's almost like a very similar series I've been covering on the channel, but a lot more interesting, you could say. Now, one of the things we also see in this episode is the relationship between the Dragon Keepers and the Dusters. Not only that, these episodes we also see the Dragon Keepers establishing their relationship with a few people around them with how they're viewed. So we have the Dusters fearing the Dragon Keepers, which of course, why not? They've been enslaved by these guys for over a decade because all their leaders were defeated, and they have to take place in this televised event. Now, Red's view of things, where he says that the weak should listen to the strong and not fight back, while the strong should not worry about the weak, is an interesting perspective where he has things where he views as the weak below him and the strong are on top, because that's an interesting point of view that this guy has to show that he's got a couple of screws loose. And he does say conflict will happen when one doesn't understand their place. So he's basically saying, hey, you guys are below us, stay where you are, because if you rebel, well, we're gonna fuck your shit up. And to be honest, it made me feel sorry for the Dusters with the position they're in, especially Fighter F, who cops it later at the end of the episode. Now, in this episode, we're also reintroduced to Hibiki and Suzukuri. I'm just going to call her Yumiko because I can pronounce that easier and people don't have to scream at me for mispronouncing the name. I can almost say it, but they say it so fast in the show that it's hard for me to sort of like grasp on with me trying to pronounce Japanese names. But Yumiko is quite the interesting one because she catches on to D's plan, and D's plan is to, of course, crush the Rangers, but she quickly discovers his identity and says, hey, I want to help you. And in this episode, you do have D sort of trying to infiltrate the Dragon Keepers, where he goes into one of the bases. We see the Red Battalion base we're introduced to, and we also meet Tokika, which is probably going to be D's rival moving forward because he does get into a fight with him in the next following episode, which was a really cool fight, I will say that, but it does look like there's going to be some rivalry between these two characters, which they called Tokita a panda. I was getting clown vibes from with how he looks. But episode 2 ends with Fighter F, who tries escaping, and of course, much like what Dragon Keeper Red was saying earlier on in the episode, saying, hey, if you guys step out of line or you guys sort of not do what you're supposed to do, then we're going to kill you. And Red uses the divine tool to kill Fighter F, and he gets blasted, and it's a really cool finishing move that he uses with the animation. But not only that, we see the transformation sequence, we see the henshin sequence, and it looked pretty cool. I mean, nothing too fancy, the animation looked pretty smooth with the transformation sequence, but it's the music that I really like with this show as well, because the music with this show, it's giving me sort of like early Heisei vibes with Super Sentai, with sort of like the orchestra, like when frickin' Red was transforming and he was finishing off Fighter F, you sort of hear this sort of like dramatic orchestral theme going on. So props to whoever's doing the music for this show, because I'm really digging it, because it is giving me Sentai vibes with what they've captured there. Now, episode 3 is quite the interesting one, because it opens up with Hibiki actually discovering D's identity, and he knows that he's a monster and wants him to stop his evil ways, but we also see Hibiki's sort of view on justice, where it's sort of like justice will prevail, evil will never win, so he's sort of got that mindset going on. But the whole premise of this episode is that it's D working with Yumiko, trying to sneak into the base where the televised event is, because with the divine tools, they're replicas, so they're not the real things, because the real things are very powerful, so they have fakes on board when they do the TV show. So the plan is to do the old switcheroo, with the Divine Tool and go in there. And I really do like Yumiko, because hearing her like voice performance in this show, her voice actress is really doing a really good job, sort of with that sort of like that sarcastic and sort of like that cheeky attitude she's got towards coming out of her voice, which is really cool. So it's nice to hear a voice being added to the personality with how she speaks and how she talks to Dee in this episode, because it's sort of like this deadpan, monotone voice, you could say, but then it's also very dry with how she speaks to him, if that makes any sense. Like, she's super sarcastic, but she also comes off very dry in some ways. They're the vibes I'm getting. But we have Dee having this face-off against Tomika. He's able to defeat him, but then you have Dee having a face-off against the Red Dragon Keepers, where he's defeated. He gets kicked around a bit because no way he was winning that fight, but the episode ends with Yumiko doing the sort of switcheroo with the Divine Tool, where we find out that Dee had the fake the whole time, and they've now got the real one, which is cool to see. But then again, after the credits, we've also got this one scene where we have this whole squadron of Rangers slaughtered by this mysterious monster, which will come into play next episode. So, episode 4. This episode opens up with something called the Sacred Banquet, and we're introduced to all the Dragon Keepers having their own assistants. Yumiko being the assistant to Yellow Keeper, but one thing she brings up is that all the Keepers have different relationship with how they view their assistants, and I really do like the Keepers' assistants design, where they've got their own unique designs and personalities as well. Pink's one is the interesting one, where it's this buff dude with like a twirling mustache. That design, I do dig that design, just a really buff dude wearing pink. I do dig that, and then everyone else has really unique designs as well. Like Greens looks like a dragon maid, which is a weird vibe I'm getting. But yeah, I really do dig their designs. I think the only one that looks bland is Red's, but that makes sense because he is killed off really quickly in this episode because he speaks up against Dragon Keeper Red, because he says, hey, you lost the tool, you should own up to it, you should sort of take the fall for this because, you know, that was your responsibility. And Red doesn't like that, and he just kills him in cold blood. We have that scene where he's got the blood all over him, and he's smiling and he's still eating. So we've got that going on. Now, the other later half of this episode is Hibiki and Dee sort of meeting up again together, where you see that Dee survived the fall, but not only that, he's getting hunted from one of the other rangers, which is Hiriku. I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong, but you have Hibiki and Dee getting sort of chased. Well, mostly Dee. Hibiki's just in there because it's sort of like weird circumstances. But this episode we also learn a little bit more about Hibiki's past, where we find out that he had this sort of, like I said, this sense of justice when he was a kid. Sort of like when you watch, sort of like the view of a superhero from watching like Kamen Rider or Super Sentai, where justice will always prevail and the heroes will always win in the end. And his parents didn't like those views. But then you find out that his parents were a part of this cult, and then one day the monster that we saw at the end of last week's episode comes down from the sky and slaughters everyone. You have this scene where Hibiki and his sister is caught in the rubble, her legs are crushed, which is going to be important later on. That's something I remember from reading the manga, so pay attention to that. And we see that he's saved by Red Dragon Keeper, so we kind of see the inspiration why he wants to become a ranger. So we have Hibiki and Dee getting chased by Heriko, who's got a replica Divine Tool, but the battle ends on an interesting note where Dee and Hibiki change places, where it seems like Dee died, but actually Hibiki took his place, where he was crazy enough to chop off his own arm and take the sort of fall. So that way, the two characters can complete their goals and be pushed into motion, where Dee wants to crush the Rangers and Hibiki wants to fix it because he knows there's some corruption with how everything is viewed with everything going on. So moving forward, things are going to be very blank for me. I'm going in blind depending on the next couple of episodes because I stopped reading the manga at volume 4. I just remembered the trials. I remember sort of like this test they had to do and another character that's going to show up later down the line. But I'm going in blind for most of these episodes, so that should be a really fun recap if I'm able to keep up with it. But Ranger Academy, I'm really enjoying. Like, I really enjoy these characters. I really enjoy the premise of this show, where it's sort of an interesting take on Super Sentai and Power Rangers and stuff like that. So I really do enjoy this show, and I'm definitely going to keep up with it. Also, I never got to say this because I was gone for 2 weeks. Big thanks to everyone who watched my episode 1 review where I wasn't expecting it to do that well. It did like 2.5k views, which was unexpected for an anime review, probably because of how I titled it, which I might do again, be a little bit cheeky. But yeah, I'm definitely going to keep reviewing Go-Go Loser Ranger each week on the channel, and we'll see where it goes. I won't do live reactions and stuff like that. That's not really my thing, but I'll probably do these recaps and rambles like I normally do on the channel, and I'll call it something unique and interesting. But anyway, guys, what did you guys think of Go-Go Loser Ranger or Ranger Reject? Are you still keeping up with it? Are you still not keeping up with it? Tell me down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. So with that said, I'm out of here, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out, take care, bye.